Hi, this is James Zhang with Old Capital. I'm here with Matt.Wideman and Bart.wickard of Newmark. And today we're going to be talking about a new deal coming out called the Enclave in Amarillo, Texas. So, Bart, Matt, thanks for jumping on. Bart, maybe if you can kick it off, give us a little background sort of on your firm and then about you guys.
Thanks, Gene. James, really appreciate you guys having us today. So we're with Newmark out of Dallas. We have 7 brokers in our office, several of which focus exclusively on the DFW market. Matt and I focus 100% of our time on the Texas secondary markets. So the Amarillos, Lubbocks, Tyler, Waco, that's our bread and butter. It's what we do day in and day out. And, we're really excited to have this new listing, the Enclave in Amarillo.
All right, Matt, give us a little bit of your background and then we'll jump into this deal.
Yeah, James, thanks for having us, man. We're pumped to be here. So yeah, I started on the principal side. It's been about 10 years being a client of a group like Newmark's and decided to jump over to the brokerage side. So hopefully my background expertise adds a lot of value as guys are looking at deals and underwriting deals, and we can actually talk numbers. So excited to jump in and talk about the Enclave today.
Sure. All right. Maybe Matt, you want to keep going. So tell us a little bit about sort of how this deal came about and then just sort of where the deal sits right now.
Yeah, so this is the Enclave. It's 1972 construction, 225 units, and a little bit larger average bedroom size, 946 square feet. But I think that's also where the opportunity lies. There's a larger demand for bigger units in a market like Amarillo. And the occupancy is really strong, 95%. This was a deal that was part of a much larger portfolio that this current owner bought one off. And they've done a great job of putting a lot of money into the deal and getting it to a place where they could get to that occupancy. And so hat tip to them for their performance, but I still think there's a ton of upside for the next guy to come in and really turn this deal. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about the market in Amarillo, James, if you'd be open to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Amarillo is a really unique market. Most people don't know a whole lot about it. It's MSA is about 290,000 people today in 2020, which is fairly sizable for the secondary markets in the state of Texas. And with that, it's a pretty diverse economy there. What I call a recession resilient type market, where the major employers are mostly healthcare and education and trade. And so a lot of this is going to be not so tied to the economy. So a market like Amarillo has actually fared much better in this season that we've been through in the economy than a major metro, for the simple reason that the major employers are healthcare and education. And with that, the unemployment rate in a market like Amarillo today is 5.4%. When globally, I think the state of Texas is at an 8% unemployment rate, and the U.S. is somewhere in the 6s. So it's fared much better, relatively speaking, to the rest of the state and even the rest of the country. And I think that bodes well for a market like this. It's somewhat recession resilient, but also has the upside for going forward. And on a deal like this, what's unique about it is the average household income in like a 2-mile radius is $80,000. So this is the right part. And if you go to the next slide, this is the right part of Amarillo. This is where you want to be. It's where a lot of the new development has come into play. It's the west side of town. It's closer to the mall. It's closer to the new Sam's Club that was just put in on the edge of town over there. And what's really important to point out is just north of this property is where you have the Texas Tech Health Resource Center, as well as the BSA. All the medical is just 2 miles north of here, which employs about 6,000 people. And it's one of the major drivers in Amarillo as far as jobs go. And all of that is right here next to the property. So I think there's a lot of advantages to being in a location, to being in Amarillo, but even more so to being in this location right off of 40, where there's 61,000 cars a day driving by. So yeah, I like the location a lot, James, for this.
Perfect. Thanks, Matt. Bart, maybe anything else on Amarillo and sort of that location, maybe some deals that you guys have done out there, any other commentary in the market before we jump into the property?
Yeah, I think like Matt said, there are a lot of reasons to like Amarillo as a whole. You look at that MSA size and that's almost 3 times the size of Waco or Tyler. So it's substantial. And this location in that panhandle, everybody in a huge swath of Texas goes there for their banking, for their financial services, for their healthcare, for education. And so with that, you have a very diversified economy, which also adds to kind of the recession-proof or recession-resistant nature of Amarillo. And look, it's in the great state of Texas. And there's no doubt that the growth prospects here are tremendous. Same with Amarillo. And because of that low cost of living, you're able to come in, buy a deal at a very good yield. And this is kind of leading us into the numbers aspect, but this deal offers a very good yield out of the gate, a great basis that you can feel good about your price per pound, but then also offer the upside. This deal, like Matt said, previous owner bought it. It had a little bit of distress to the property, and they've spent almost $2 million in capital since they've owned the property. It's a 70s built property, but looks and operates a lot newer. But most importantly, they've taken that occupancy distress and brought it to 95% occupancy. They've been there for a full 3 months. Next step is burning off what little concessions exist, and then continuing to push rents in the value add program. But I jumped ahead of you, and I apologize, but
it's all right. You knew exactly where I was going. So any other comments just sort of on the site and sort of how it lays out and sort of the access to the freeway and visibility right there?
Well, I think what's important to note here is that getting 225 units on an acquisition gives you some immediate economies of scale. Gives you a substantial size asset with good amenities, and like Matt mentioned, 61,000 jobs driving right by the asset, or cars driving right by the asset on a daily basis. This thing gets a ton of visibility, and being in the right part of town, literally walking distance from the medical center, really makes it an attractive deal. The drive-by, if you go through Amarillo, you mentioned you did, James, you probably noticed this deal.
Right. Yeah,
it's hard to miss.
I guess maybe talk through interiors and sort of what the seller's done. I know they probably did a lot of work on the exteriors, but what's sort of the interiors, and maybe give us a little flavor of what's on the interiors of these units.
Yeah, I mean, you've got kind of your classic units, a partial upgrade and a full upgrade. And they've done about 75 units, so maybe 30% have had some sort of upgrade to it. I think the real potential, and they've proven this with the asset, is to take that classic unit, which may look a little older, do some appliances, floors. You can see the floors there, appliances, maybe some fixtures, paint, that sort of thing. Spend maybe $4,500 a unit, and they're getting upwards of $150 a month rent premium on that upgraded unit. So there's still the majority of the property left to be done. So again, a lot of meat on the bone for the next guy.
So I jumped ahead a little bit, but just sort of
I
looking
keep
at
doing that to you.
If so like a A1, I guess your market's 600, and then I guess if you do a partial, you get up to 680, and you do a full, you get 755. That's just an example on those units.
That's right.
Okay. Matt, maybe talk about the roof and maybe some of the parking, just some of the exterior characteristics of the property, and anything that you can share for people, just in terms of the amenity set as well.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So lower density property with 19 units per acre, which I know you have pointed out there. I think that's really hard to find off 40 right now in Amarillo. So I think that's nice to have that. The other side of this is the roof. The roofs are pitched. They were replaced, to my knowledge, back in 2017, I believe. So you've got fairly new roofs here. And then there's a lot of parking on the property. They do have about 132 covered parking spaces along with 422 open. So that is a play there if you wanted to start charging for those covered spots. They are not doing that now. So that is an angle that you could go about on this. And there is a storage unit on back where you potentially could add some extra units. The current owner has talked about doing that. So there is some opportunity to do that. And you can see that on our site map. The other thing to point out, and Bart, maybe you can speak to this, is just the down units. There are 9 down units, but all of these are scheduled to be brought back online before the sale would take place. Bart, you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Despite having 9 units that are down, they've achieved the kind of increased occupancy that they have. These will be all new units with the upgrade, getting the higher rents. And like you said, Matt, that's going to be done by the time that a new buyer would take over. It basically amounts to one building in the backside of the property.
Okay. We touched on this earlier. So, I mean, really about 30% of the units have a full upgrade, 10% partial upgrade. And you think really the play is come in and spend the money, maybe $4,500 a door on interiors and drive rents up anywhere from $100, $150 is really the play.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. And I think, James, it's important to note, right out of the gate, this thing finally has reached stabilization. And so, in trying to gain occupancy on an asset that's gotten, a fair amount of physical work, that takes time. But once you've established that, you've got a good tenant base, the occupancy's high. So the next, really, there's some operational upside right off the bat. You're buying a double-digit cash-on-cash return day one. Then you start to burn off some of those concessions that you had to offer to some of those earlier tenants to get them into your asset. And then you start getting those units online, which they will be online, so you can increase that occupancy. And then you start pushing rents. So your double-digit cash-on-cash return continues to grow. And then you implement the next step, which is what you just alluded to, the value add. And if you look at this property, just forget about the location for a minute, but if you look at where the asset sits with respect to the other kind of B-class assets in the market, I mean, there's almost a 20-cent rent differential right off the bat, even not doing those upgrades, which really makes it an exciting asset with a ton of meat still on the bone and a ton of upside.
Let's talk about those comps. I put up 3 or 4 here in the market. Maybe talk to maybe some of the pros and cons, or what's different versus the subject property, and how it compares to these.
Well, I think the biggest thing that jumps off the page to me is those square foot averages for the units. I mean, you're almost talking 200 square feet bigger. So right. You've got really what amounts to a superior product with a lot more drive-by traffic. That rent there at 82 cents a foot, net effective at 77, that's 21 cents below the average rent comps. So, those are all fine deals, but again, you burn off concessions, you continue to increase occupancy, and you've got 20 cents of rent built in without even having to implement a value add program.
Okay. With perhaps one of the better, if not best, located deals in all of Amarillo, from being right off 40, right by the medical. I mean, there's a lot of positives right there with high average household income nearby, 80,000 plus. And there's a lot of positives to like about this location.
Yeah, and I mean, almost all these guys are 95% occupied or higher. So you got occupancy upside, you got rent upside on both fronts, and then you got the rental increase. So that's perfect. I guess in terms of debt, when we looked at the deal, even with the down units, once those come online, we'll be able to count those. But we took a T3 on average on net rental. Other income, we took a T12, 3% management fee. Payroll was about $1,150 a door. G&A, advertising, $400 a door. utilities, water and sewer, T12. I don't know. We didn't mention this. Have they done anything on the water savings or green programs or anything, or do you guys know?
I don't believe they have.
Okay.
I don't believe
All
that
right.
they have. And they're not, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, they're not rubbing back that water expense, are they?
I believe,
Maybe they are.
yeah, I think they are to some
Okay.
degree, but there might be some more capture there available.
Yeah, it
Okay.
looks like they are a little bit.
Okay. And then we did R&M at 600 a door, and insurance, which was T12 at 650 a door. And then we did bring up taxes about 25%. And it equates to about 50% of the purchase price times the tax rate on this particular deal. So we just closed the Fannie Mae loan out there. So we had it quoted by Fannie, and they are right at 75%. So about 12 million. I think the whisper on this one's 16. So you're right at 75% LTV. And we're looking at 1 to 3 years interest only. And Fannie Mae right now has a reserve of 12 months of P&I. So it ends up being about 5% of the loan, or about $600,000 on your P&I payment. And then Freddie Mac, we've looked at Freddie Mac conventional. So if you wanted a floating rate loan, that's available as well. A little bit smaller reserve, 9 months P&I, but we've seen Freddie Mac be a little bit more aggressive on things like taxes and especially expenses on underwriting. So you're probably going to be a little bit lower leverage on Freddie Mac conventional in our experience out there. So any other things to just sort of wrap up? Maybe if you guys are having a call for offers date, or any specific items you want to note before we jump off here, guys?
Yeah, I think we're going to launch the property this week to the market. Our typical marketing process lasts maybe 5 or 6 weeks on a secondary market asset like this. I think it's important to note that they are going to consider any and all offers as they come. So if you look at the deal, you like the deal, it's very possible that, with a fairly strong offer, you could engage the seller and even beating that call for offers date. But we'll set that probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks if an offer hasn't been negotiated in the meantime. So we're looking at what, kind of mid to late February for a call for offers date.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot for jumping on, guys. The contact information for Bart and Matt are here on the slide. So if you have any questions about the deal, they can direct you in the right direction in terms of getting the offer memorandum and the financials. So appreciate you guys jumping on the call, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks
Thanks,
much,
James.
James.
Appreciate you.
See you guys.